The glittering landscape of Southern California has always been a place where the lines between theatrical illusion and reality blur into an inseparable spectacle. For decades, the sprawling metropolis of Los Angeles has served as the ultimate stage for grand narratives, where individuals rewrite their destinies under the warmth of the Pacific sun. It is a city accustomed to unusual storylines, dramatic reversals of fortune, and figures who transition effortlessly from the glowing screens of popular culture into positions of profound influence. Yet, even by the standards of an entertainment capital well-versed in the unexpected, the recent events unfolding within the municipal arena have captured the attention of the entire nation, transforming a local civic process into a high-stakes drama watched by millions. The collective gaze of the public is currently fixed on a narrative that possesses all the classic elements of a modern thriller: sudden shifts in momentum, intense public debates, and an underlying sense of unpredictability that leaves observers eagerly anticipating the next chapter. If you want to stay informed about how these captivating national narratives unfold and never miss a deep dive into the events shaping our world, please take a brief moment right now to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. By joining our community, you ensure that you are always at the forefront of the stories that matter most, delivered with the depth and context you deserve. As the initial chapters of this unfolding civic drama began to write themselves, the atmosphere across the Golden State grew increasingly charged with anticipation. The process of choosing leaders in such a vast and influential region is never a quiet affair, but this particular cycle carried an unusual weight. A feeling that something entirely unprecedented was brewing beneath the surface of routine civic procedures. In the weeks leading up to the initial vote counting, observers noted a distinct shift in the public mood, a combination of fatigue and sudden curiosity that always precedes a major cultural moment. The primary system utilized in this region operates under unique rules, a system where all contenders enter a singular arena regardless of traditional affiliations, creating a crowded field where anyone with enough visibility can attempt to capture lightning in a bottle. This wide-open environment naturally invites larger-than-life personalities to step forward, individuals who are comfortable in the spotlight and know precisely how to command the gaze of an audience. For the average resident navigating the complex realities of modern urban life, the upcoming decision felt less like a standard bureaucratic transition and more like a pivotal cultural crossroad, where the old ways of doing things were being openly challenged by the sheer force of modern celebrity and media strategy. When the first batches of data began to trickle out in the immediate aftermath of the initial voting phase, the preliminary results sent a ripple of genuine surprise through the community. An unconventional contender, widely recognized from the golden era of unscripted television, managed to secure an early and highly visible position near the top of the leaderboards. This sudden surge of support for a figure best known for dramatic on-screen arguments and the manufactured tensions of Hollywood storytelling instantly reframed the entire discussion, forcing seasoned analysts to reconsider their assumptions about what the public truly desired. The sight of a familiar media personality commanding such a prominent spot created an immediate sensation, generating a wave of intense speculation that quickly rippled across television networks and digital platforms alike. To the casual observer, it appeared as though a massive upset was actively taking place in real time, a dramatic upheaval of the established order that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of the entire region. This initial burst of momentum was met with a mixture of celebration from passionate supporters and deep skepticism from traditionalists, setting the stage for a prolonged confrontation over the true direction of the city. However, as any seasoned observer of this unique coastal landscape knows, first impressions can be incredibly deceiving, and the true nature of a contest is rarely revealed in its opening moments. The initial data reflected only a fraction of the total participation, representing those who chose to mark their choices in person during the early phases of the process. In a region where lifestyles are fast-paced and daily routines are notoriously complex, the vast majority of the public utilizes a completely different method to make their voices heard, a method that naturally introduces a significant delay into the final tally. As the days progressed and the initial excitement began to settle into a tense waiting game, the true complexity of the situation began to emerge, hinting at a much larger and more intricate story that was waiting to be told. The contrast between the immediate, dramatic early returns and the slow, methodical processing of the remaining data created a palpable friction. an atmospheric tension that hung heavily over the entire metropolis as everyone waited to see if the early lead would hold or dissolve into thin air. The initial illusion of an overwhelming victory quickly began to fracture as the true mechanics of the modern electoral system were set into motion, revealing a stark contrast between early physical turnouts and the massive volume of mail-in ballots. In Los Angeles, the reality of daily life dictates that a significant majority of the population prefers the convenience of voting from the comfort of their homes, taking their time to deliberate over a complex field of candidates. This reliance on the postal system introduces a natural and predictable delay in the final tabulation, as hundreds of thousands of envelopes must be securely received, verified, and processed long after the physical polling stations have closed their doors for the night. Late-night television host Jimmy Kimmel seized upon this exact dynamic during his Monday evening broadcast, peeling back the layers of the developing situation with his signature blend of sharp wit and analytical breakdown. Kimmel pointed out that the early surge for Spencer Pratt, the former reality television star from the hit series The Hills, who had unexpectedly entered the mayoral race with high-profile backing, was merely an artifact of how the votes were sequenced. The early returns that placed Pratt in a strong second position represented the individuals who had cast their ballots in person on Election Day, a group that traditionally tends to favor different political alignments and candidates who rely heavily on immediate momentum. As the subsequent days unfolded, the postal workers and election officials began the painstaking process of opening and counting the mail-in ballots, which told an entirely different story about the collective will of the Los Angeles electorate. This vast, silent majority of voters had waited until the absolute last minute to send in their documents, carefully weighing their options in an attempt to figure out which candidate would ultimately disappoint them the least in a challenging urban environment. As these meticulously verified mail-in ballots were systematically added to the grand total, Spencer Pratt's early advantage began to steadily evaporate, causing him to slide from the crucial second-place position down into a distant third place. In the context of California's unique jungle primary system, where only the top two finishers, regardless of party affiliation, are permitted to advance to the decisive November runoff, this shift was catastrophic for the reality star's political ambitions, effectively ending his journey right then and there. The dramatic shift in the numbers did not remain a localized issue for long, as the results caught the immediate attention of President Donald Trump, who had previously offered his enthusiastic endorsement to Pratt's unconventional mayoral bid. Refusing to accept the standard mathematical reality of the counting process, Trump quickly launched a series of public statements aimed at discrediting the entire process, echoing a familiar pattern of behavior that has come to define his approach to unfavorable outcomes. Trump openly cried foul over the results, claiming without evidence that the late-emerging mail-in ballots were part of a coordinated effort by his political opponents to actively steal the election from his chosen candidate. He went so far as to use derogatory nicknames for the opposition party, labeling them as incompetent and corrupt while simultaneously accusing them of orchestrating a highly sophisticated and massive late-night ballot operation designed to manipulate the final standings. This immediate escalation transformed a local municipal count into a highly charged national conversation, drawing a line in the sand between those who trusted the established rules of the civic process and those who viewed every setback as proof of a grand conspiracy. Jimmy Kimmel dedicated a substantial portion of his monologue to deconstructing the inherent flaws and logical contradictions buried within the former president's stolen election narrative. With a mix of amusement and disbelief, Kimmel highlighted the absurdity of a theory which suggested that an opposition party could successfully rig a major election by intentionally allowing the rival candidate to take a commanding lead in the opening hours. The late-night host pointed out the profound irony in portraying the opposition as simultaneously foolish and yet masterfully capable of executing a flawless covert operation to reverse the will of the people at the 11th hour. Kimmel's critique resonated deeply with an audience that had grown increasingly weary of identical arguments being raised after nearly every single contest that did not yield a specific desired outcome. The monologue served as a real-time fact-check, cutting through the emotional rhetoric and bringing the focus back to the mundane reality of administrative deadlines and the physical processing of paper ballots. The tension surrounding the Los Angeles primary serves as a microcosm of a much larger systemic friction that continues to define the broader landscape of modern American civic life. The debate over mail-in voting, ballot collection deadlines, and the transparency of the tabulation process has transformed routine administrative tasks into ideological battlegrounds where every single update is scrutinized for signs of malfeasance. For weeks leading up to the count, local officials had repeatedly warned the public that the final results would take time to materialize, urging patience as the legal framework of the state requires a thorough verification of signatures and postmarks. Despite these preemptive efforts to manage expectations, the sudden shift in candidate rankings provided the perfect fuel for a pre-existing narrative of distrust that has been carefully cultivated over several cycles. The unfolding drama in California highlighted how easily a predictable administrative timeline can be reinterpreted through a lens of suspicion, turning a standard procedural update into a moment of acute political crisis. As the public tried to make sense of the conflicting narratives, the atmosphere became saturated with competing claims, leaving many to wonder what this specific dispute portended for the future of the nation's democratic institutions. The spectacle of a television host defending the integrity of a municipal vote against the accusations of a former commander-in-chief underscored the bizarre, entertainment-driven nature of contemporary public discourse, where serious civic matters are frequently filtered through the lens of late-night comedy and media performance. The stakes extending from this specific primary dispute reached far beyond the boundaries of Southern California, signaling a tumultuous period ahead for the entire country as it marches steadily toward the pivotal midterm elections. Kimmel himself offered a somber prediction toward the conclusion of his segment, warning his viewers that the rhetoric surrounding the Los Angeles mayoral race was merely a preview of the intense strategies that would be deployed on a national scale in the coming months. The weaponization of standard voting procedures is no longer an isolated phenomenon, but rather a core component of a larger playbook designed to preemptively question the legitimacy of any unfavorable outcome. By framing the natural influx of mail-in ballots as an inherently suspicious event, the narrative sets up a perpetual state of conflict where a definitive conclusion becomes nearly impossible to achieve in the minds of a deeply divided populace. The city of Los Angeles, with its massive population and immense cultural footprint, became the primary testing ground for these divisive arguments, showcasing how quickly a local civic disagreement can be amplified into a national crisis of confidence. The true tension of the moment lay not just in who would occupy the mayor's office, but in whether the public would continue to accept the basic rules of engagement that have sustained the system for generations. The final resolution of this high-stakes municipal battle did not merely decide the immediate future of leadership in the nation's second-largest city, but it also offered a definitive conclusion to one of the most improbable political journeys in modern Californian history. The ultimate confirmation that Spencer Pratt had been mathematically eliminated from the November runoff came after days of intense scrutiny, during which election workers systematically processed the remaining mail-in ballots that shifted the second-place spot permanently to progressive city council member Nithya Raman. This development left the incumbent leader Karen Bass to prepare for a direct face-off against a challenger from her own ideological horizon, completely sidelining the media-driven insurgency that had sought to disrupt the status quo. For Pratt, whose life has been defined by the pursuit of public attention and the mastery of unscripted television, this defeat marked the conclusion of a deeply personal and chaotic chapter that began not in a political war room, but amid the devastating ashes of a historic natural disaster. The trajectory of his campaign was permanently forged during the catastrophic Palisades fire, an event that completely leveled his family estate and transformed him from a reality television personality into an angry, disaffected citizen demanding immediate institutional accountability. In the aftermath of that personal tragedy, Pratt redirected his signature energy toward a highly aggressive, digitally fueled crusade against the existing city administration. Utilizing viral social media campaigns and advanced artificial intelligence imagery to portray himself as a solitary force fighting against urban decay, his message of absolute disruption resonated deeply with a significant segment of the population that had grown thoroughly exhausted by chronic issues such as homelessness and rising crime, allowing him to command substantial support and temporarily capture the number 2 position on election night. Yet, despite a commanding debate performance that initially surprised his harshest critics and attracted backing from prominent cultural figures, the institutional weight of the traditional electorate and the slow influx of late-decided mail-in ballots ultimately exposed the limitations of a celebrity-centric platform in a complex metropolitan area. The aftermath of the race left a highly polarized landscape where the contrasting interpretations of the results continued to ripple across the national media space, serving as a textbook example of the friction between immediate digital momentum and methodical institutional processes. While representatives for the established system pointed to the final tally as a triumph of complete voter participation and standard democratic procedures, the intense rhetoric surrounding the multi-day count demonstrated how easily public trust can be strained when outcomes do not align with initial expectations. The intervention of high-profile endorsements and subsequent allegations of systemic unfairness only amplified the underlying tension, transforming what should have been a standard administrative conclusion into a prolonged national debate about the reliability of modern voting systems. Analysts examining the final data noted that Pratt's ultimate vote share closely mirrored traditional regional alignments, suggesting that while his unconventional methods and pop culture background granted him unprecedented visibility, they were ultimately insufficient to break through the deeply entrenched patterns of a major urban center. The conclusion of this chapter leaves the city at a pivotal crossroads, preparing for a November election that will feature an intense debate over the efficiency of current social programs, the management of municipal budgets, and the best path forward for a population seeking tangible improvements in their daily quality of life. The story of this primary serves as a stark reminder of the evolving nature of public life, where the tools of modern entertainment and the real-world consequences of local crises can converge to create a political phenomenon that challenges every conventional rule of the game. For the viewers who watch this spectacle unfold from the initial television monologues to the final late-night tallies, the events in Los Angeles provided a vivid preview of the strategies, rhetoric, and systemic debates that are poised to define the broader national landscape for the foreseeable future.